Welcome back to Midnight Whispers, where every shadow hides a secret and every silence has a story. A middle-aged male narrator voice, deep, resonant, slightly gravelly, slow pacing with dramatic pauses, letting silence build suspense. The tone is eerie, unsettling, and haunting, as if telling a true, disturbing story by the campfire or late at night. Each sentence is read with weight, drawing listeners in, whispering dread rather than shouting it. Intonation should rise and fall like a chilling wave, ending sections with a heavy, final drop. Every word must carry an undercurrent of menace, enough to make the audience's skin crawl, while still lulling them towards sleep. Welcome back to Midnight Whispers, where every shadow hides a secret and every silence has a story. A cold mountain road stretched endlessly under a stormy night sky. Rain lashed against the windshield, the wipers fighting in vain to clear the view. A young married couple, exhausted from hours of driving, realized their car was giving out. The engine sputtered, then died, leaving them stranded in the middle of nowhere. Far ahead, through the mist and sheets of rain, a faint light flickered. It was a wooden sign, swinging back and forth in the howling wind. The faint outline of a small inn appeared between the trees, its old frame creaking as though it had stood there for centuries. The glow of a single lantern invited them, promising shelter from the storm. Hand in hand, they pushed open the heavy wooden door. Inside, the smell of damp wood and old fabric filled the air. The lobby was dimly lit, with faded wallpaper peeling at the edges. Behind the counter stood an elderly woman, her posture frail, but her sharp eyes reflected the lantern's glow. "Welcome," she said softly, her voice calm yet unsettling. She slid an old iron key across the counter. "Room number 3. But listen carefully. No matter what you hear tonight, do not approach the last door at the end of the hallway." The couple exchanged uneasy glances. Thunder cracked outside. They accepted the key, unsure whether to laugh off her words or take them as a serious warning. As they carried their bags up the creaking staircase, the inn seemed to breathe with them, each step echoing like a pulse within the wooden walls. The night had only just begun. The couple entered room number 3. It was small but warm enough compared to the storm outside. The wallpaper was faded, patterned with strange vines that seemed to twist in unnatural ways. The bed creaked as they set their bags down, dust rising from the old blanket. A single oil lamp flickered in the corner, its light dancing against the cracked mirror on the wall. For a moment, silence. Only the rain battering the windows and the occasional growl of thunder filled the night. The husband tried to shake off the unease. "It's just an old place," he muttered, forcing a smile. His wife, however, couldn't forget the warning about the last door. Why would the old woman say such a thing? As they settled in, the sound of floorboards groaning echoed from the hallway. Slow, deliberate, footsteps that seemed heavier than any ordinary person's. They froze, exchanging looks of dread. The steps grew closer, dragging, as though something was being pulled along with them. Then came the sound. 3 sharp knocks, not at their door, but somewhere further down the hall. Cock, cock, cock. The rhythm was steady, patient, moving from one door to the next. The wife clutched her husband's hand. "It's nothing, just another guest," he whispered, though his voice trembled. Yet deep down he knew there were no other cars outside. No other travelers had come through that storm. The knocking grew closer and closer until it stopped right outside their door.
The couple sat frozen on the edge of the bed, staring at the door as the echo of the last knock faded into silence. The storm outside raged louder, but the hallway was eerily quiet, as if the inn itself was holding its breath. The husband rose slowly, his bare feet pressing against the cold wooden floor. Each step toward the door seemed heavier than the last. His wife whispered urgently, "Don't open it, please." He hesitated, hand trembling over the brass handle. Then, nothing. No sound. No footsteps retreating. Only silence. Suddenly, a faint scratching came from the bottom of the door, a sound like nails dragging against the wood, deliberate and slow. The couple's skin crawled. They backed away, retreating toward the bed, their hearts pounding in unison. Then came the whisper, faint, almost impossible to catch, a voice on the other side of the door, calling softly, stretching each word, "Let me in." The wife gasped, covering her mouth. The husband shook his head in disbelief. No one else should have been there. No one else could have known they were in that room. The lamp flickered violently, plunging the room into near darkness. For a split second, the cracked mirror reflected not their own shapes, but a tall, distorted figure standing right outside the door. And then, silence again. Only the storm remained.
The husband locked the door quickly, his hands shaking as the metal clicked into place. He turned back toward his wife, trying to steady his voice. "It's just the storm. We're tired, imagining things."
But his words sounded hollow even to himself. The scratching stopped, replaced by the sound of footsteps again, slow, dragging, moving away from their door this time. The couple strained to listen, every nerve on edge, until the steps seemed to fade into the far end of the hallway. Curiosity gnawed at him. Against his wife's pleas, the husband pressed his ear to the door. Silence. Then, from somewhere distant in the hallway, came a deep groan, like wood bending under immense weight, or perhaps something breathing. The wife pointed suddenly at the mirror. The cracked glass shimmered faintly, though the lamp had steadied. Within its reflection, the hallway stretched behind them, dimly lit, and there it was, a shadow, tall and thin, standing at the very end near the forbidden door. Her breath caught in her throat. She turned to look directly into the hallway, but through the gap beneath their door there was nothing, only darkness. When she looked back at the mirror, the shadow was closer, and it was moving toward them.
The couple huddled together, eyes fixed on the cracked mirror. The distorted shadow loomed closer with each flicker of the oil lamp, even though the hallway outside remained eerily quiet. It seemed the mirror was showing them something they weren't meant to see. The wife whispered, "It's not out there, it's in here with us." Her voice cracked, trembling with fear. The husband grabbed the lamp and held it toward the mirror. The flame sputtered, casting long, unnatural shapes along the walls. In the reflection, the figure now stood just behind them, impossibly tall, its elongated arms stretching almost to the ceiling. He spun around. Nothing. Only the stale air of the room, heavy with silence. But the moment he looked back at the mirror, the figure had moved even closer, its faceless head tilting in their direction. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed down the hallway. The forbidden door at the end had slammed shut with such force the walls rattled. The couple jumped, their hearts racing. The wife begged, "We have to leave now!" She grabbed for the door, fumbling with the lock. But as soon as she touched the handle, the mirror cracked deeper, spreading jagged lines across its surface. From within those fractures, something began to move.
The fractured mirror pulsed like a living wound in the wall. The cracks spread wider, and from the dark gaps seeped a faint mist, curling into the room like cold breath. The oil lamp flickered wildly, threatening to die out completely. The wife stumbled back, clutching her chest as the mist reached her feet. It was icy, burning her skin as though frostbite had touched her bones. The husband yanked her away, trying to shield her from the strange vapor. From within the mirror, a pale hand pressed against the glass, long fingers with nails that scraped across the cracks. The sound pierced the room, high-pitched and unnatural. The couple covered their ears, but the screech echoed inside their skulls. The hand pushed harder, and another crack burst open, revealing more of the figure's body, forcing its way through. Its shape was twisted, too tall for the frame of the mirror, but still pressing, squeezing, fighting to emerge. The husband grabbed the lamp and hurled it at the glass. The explosion of fire and shattered oil sent the mist recoiling for a moment, and the figure's hand slipped back into the darkness. But the relief was brief. The fire sputtered out quickly, and in the silence that followed, they heard it, the steady sound of footsteps in the hallway again, and this time they weren't dragging. They were running straight toward room number 3.
The pounding footsteps thundered down the hallway, faster, heavier, like something enormous hurtling toward them. The couple clung to each other, staring at the door as the floor shook beneath the weight of every step. The wife screamed, "It's coming!" Her voice cracked, drowned out by the relentless stomping. The husband dragged a chair and jammed it beneath the doorknob, his hands trembling so violently he nearly dropped it. Just as he stepped back, the door rattled violently. Bang! 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 Each strike was powerful enough to shake the frame, splinters raining from the wood. From the mirror, a distorted reflection of the hallway showed what was outside. A tall, faceless figure sprinting toward them, its limbs flailing unnaturally. But here's the horror. When they looked directly at the door, there was nothing, no shadow, no one there. Only the mirror revealed it. Another crash. The door bowed inward, hinges screaming. The couple backed against the wall, desperate, the wife sobbing into her husband's chest. Then, silence. The door stopped shaking. The pounding ceased. For a breathless moment, all they heard was the storm outside. And then, scurch. The unmistakable sound of nails dragging down wood, moving slowly from their door toward the end of the hallway. The forbidden door. The sound of nails dragged across the hallway wall until it reached the very end. The door the old woman had warned them never to approach. The couple held their breath as the air in the room grew heavy, almost suffocating, as though the inn itself was waiting. The scratching stopped. For a few moments, silence. Then a deep groan echoed through the building, the timbers of the inn shuddering like a dying beast. The forbidden door creaked, slowly, painfully, as though something immense was pushing from the other side. The wife clutched her husband's arm. "It's opening," she whispered, her voice barely audible. They turned toward the mirror. Its fractured surface now reflected the hallway with terrifying clarity. The forbidden door stood wide open, and beyond it was not another room, but a black void swirling with mist, endless and hungry. In that reflection, something moved inside the darkness. Long limbs, shifting, writhing, pressing against the frame. A head emerged, pale, faceless, but unmistakably aware of them. The husband stumbled back, shaking his head. "This isn't real. It can't be real." But the wife's eyes filled with tears. "It's not the inn that's keeping us safe. It's the door. It was locked.
to keep it in. From the mirror, the faceless figure stepped fully into the hallway, moving toward room number 3.
The figure's footsteps echoed through the hallway, each one louder than the storm outside. The boards creaked under its impossible weight. The couple pressed against the far wall of their room, staring at the mirror in horror as the faceless thing drew closer. In the reflection, its body was grotesquely tall, shoulders scraping the ceiling, arms nearly touching the floor. Though it had no eyes, they felt its gaze pierce through them, freezing them where they stood. The wife whispered a prayer under her breath, but her words faltered when the mirror began to rattle violently. The fractures spread like lightning, shards threatening to fall at any second. The reflection blurred and twisted, yet one thing was clear. The figure was now directly outside room number 3. The husband grabbed a chair, ready to fight, though deep down he knew no wood or steel could stop what was coming. His wife pulled at his arm, pleading, "We have to escape! The window! Anything!" Just then, the air grew still. The footsteps stopped. For a moment, it was as if time itself held its breath. And then 3 slow knocks thundered against their door. Ka, ka, ka. The room shook. The lamp flickered. The mirror cracked wide open, splitting down the center. And from the shattered glass, a whisper bled into the room. "I see you."
The whisper slithered through the cracks of the broken mirror, chilling the air in the room. The couple staggered back as shards of glass began to loosen, trembling as though something on the other side was forcing them outward. The husband shouted, "Stay away!" and hurled a chair at the mirror. The impact shattered it completely, pieces scattering across the floor. For a moment, silence. But within the jagged frame, the reflection did not vanish. It deepened into a swirling void of darkness. From that void, the faceless figure stepped forward. Its body slid unnaturally through the broken glass, as if the mirror were a doorway. One elongated arm emerged first, followed by a grotesque shoulder that cracked as it bent itself into the room. The wife screamed, dragging her husband toward the window. The storm outside was vicious, but it was the only escape. Rain pounded the glass, lightning illuminating the forest below. They hesitated. Jumping could mean death. Behind them, the creature's head pushed through the mirror's frame. Though it had no eyes, its featureless face tilted toward them, sensing their fear. The air grew colder, thick with the stench of rot. The husband made a choice. He smashed the window with his bare hand, blood mixing with rain as the shards scattered. He yelled, "We jump! Now!" The wife looked back one last time. The creature was almost fully inside the room, its faceless head inches from the floor. And it was smiling, without a mouth.
Wind and rain howled through the shattered window, soaking the room as the couple clung to each other. The husband urged, "Now, before it's too late!" His voice was barely audible above the roar of the storm. The wife hesitated, staring down at the ground far below. Jagged rocks and twisted roots jutted out from the forest floor, promising certain injury may be worse. But the horror pushing through the mirror left no other choice. Behind them, the creature's torso emerged fully into the room. Its limbs cracked at unnatural angles, stretching far too long for a human body. The faceless head twisted, jerking from side to side as if sniffing the air. It let out a guttural hiss, vibrating the walls. The husband climbed onto the sill, pulling his wife close. He whispered, "Trust me." Together, they leapt into the storm. For a terrifying moment, weightlessness consumed them. Rain blinded their eyes as the wind tore at their clothes. Then came the crash, branches snapping, wood splintering as they tumbled through the trees. Pain seared their bodies, but miraculously they landed in the mud, alive. Above them, lightning lit the sky. In the flash, they saw the silhouette of the inn. At the window of room number 3, the faceless figure leaned out, its head tilting downward, watching them with patient stillness. And then it retreated, vanishing into the darkness of the inn.
The couple stumbled through the forest, soaked to the bone, their clothes torn from the fall. Every breath came in ragged gasps, every step sinking into the mud. The storm roared above them, but all they could think of was putting distance between themselves and the cursed inn. The wife glanced back, shivering. "Do you think it's following us?" The husband shook his head, though he wasn't sure. "We just keep moving. We'll find a road, someone, anyone." But the woods were endless. The trees loomed tall and black, their branches weaving together like a cage. No matter which direction they turned, the forest seemed to twist back upon itself. Then came the sound, a faint creak, like wood bending under strain. They froze. Slowly, the husband turned, scanning the darkness. The inn was nowhere near, yet the sound persisted, echoing between the trees. The wife clutched his arm. "It's here," she whispered. A flash of lightning split the sky. For the briefest moment, the forest lit up, and in the distance, between the trunks, a tall figure stood, motionless, watching. Thunder followed, plunging the woods back into blackness. When their eyes adjusted, the figure was gone. But the sound of dragging footsteps began again, this time circling them in the trees.
The dragging footsteps grew louder, echoing from every direction. The couple spun in circles, trying to catch sight of whatever stalked them. The forest pressed closer, the storm muffling their cries.
The husband shouted into the darkness, "Leave us alone!" His voice cracked, swallowed by the trees. Then, one by one, pale shapes flickered between the trunks. Not one figure, but many. Tall, faceless shadows, their limbs grotesquely long, swaying unnaturally as though pulled by invisible strings. The wife's knees buckled. "There's more than one," she gasped. The shadows moved in unison, slow and deliberate, forming a wide circle around them. Every flash of lightning revealed the ring tightening, each faceless head tilting at the same unnatural angle. Their silence was worse than any scream. Desperate, the husband dragged his wife toward a gap between two trees, but as soon as they moved, the figures shifted, blocking the path. No matter where they turned, the circle remained unbroken. The wife clung to him, tears streaking her rain-soaked face. "We can't get out! They're herding us!" The ground trembled. In the distance, deep within the woods, came a sound far more terrifying than the storm. The creak of a door opening. The forbidden door.
The couple froze as the echo of the door creaking open rippled through the forest. It wasn't possible. There were no buildings, no walls, only endless trees. Yet the sound was unmistakable, deep and hollow, like ancient wood shifting on rusted hinges. The faceless shadows tightened their circle, moving in rhythm with the groaning sound, their heads tilted in unison, all turning toward the same point in the darkness ahead. Lightning tore across the sky, and for a fleeting second they saw it, a solitary door, standing upright among the trees. No frame, no walls, just a door, impossibly old, its surface covered in claw marks. Mist seeped from the crack as it opened wider, spilling cold into the forest. The wife's voice trembled. "It's the same door from the inn." Her husband pulled her back, desperate. "We can't let it open fully. If it does—" The shadows stepped aside, leaving a clear path to the door, as though beckoning them closer. The ground quaked, and the mist rolled outward, curling around their ankles. From the darkness within, a massive hand gripped the edge of the frame, fingers impossibly long. The trees shook as something began to emerge, and the whispers started again. Hundreds of voices layered together, chanting one phrase over and over. "Let me in."
Part 15. The Last Guest. The chanting grew louder, rattling the very air around them. The forest seemed to bow inward, trees bending as if pulled toward the impossible door. The couple clung to each other, their breaths shallow, knowing escape was impossible. The massive hand pulled further,
and now a figure began to emerge. Taller than the trees, its faceless head scraped the sky, its limbs stretching unnaturally as it forced itself into their world. Every shadow in the woods twisted toward it, as though welcoming an ancient king. The wife screamed, "We can't let it through!" In desperation, she tore a shard of glass from her coat pocket, the remnant of the inn's mirror she had grabbed without realizing. The shard shimmered faintly, humming with strange energy. The husband understood instantly. Together they faced the door. With trembling hands, they raised the shard toward the opening. The voices shrieked, furious, as the glass glowed brighter. The faceless shadows shrank back, writhing. The figure roared without a mouth, a sound that split the night. But as the shard pulsed, the door began to close, groaning, fighting against the force. The couple pressed harder, screaming with every ounce of strength. At last, with a deafening slam, the door shut. The forest fell silent. The shadows evaporated like smoke. The shard in their hands crumbled into dust. They collapsed in the mud, shaking, broken, but alive. Dawn's first light pierced the storm clouds above, painting the forest in pale gold. Behind them, the inn was gone. Only the sound of the old woman's whisper lingered in the wind. Some guests never leave.